Sometimes the loudest betrayals happen in the quietest moments. Mine arrived less than 24 hours after I became a mother. I stood on a sidewalk with my newborn in my arms, wondering how a house I'd helped build suddenly had no room for me. Welcome back to Family Reckoning, where family secrets always leave a mark. I used to believe that sewing could teach you everything about life. I'm a professional seamstress, and every garment begins with loose pieces that don't seem to belong together. If you're patient enough, each careful stitch creates something strong enough to survive years of wear. Families I once thought worked the same way. Every small kindness was another stitch. Every sacrifice tightened the seams. I was wrong. Some fabrics only pretend to hold together. Pull the wrong thread and the whole thing unravels. My name is Brielle, and before becoming a mother, I spent nearly 10 years running a small alterations shop in our town. Brides trusted me with dresses worth more than my yearly income. Business owners brought expensive suits because they knew I never cut corners. Precision was my reputation. Every stitch mattered. My husband, Grant, worked in commercial real estate. He was charming in the effortless way that made strangers assume he had always lived an easy life. We met because he needed a suit altered before an important meeting. He joked that I had improved his confidence more than his jacket. Somehow that joke became coffee, then dinners, then marriage. For a while, everything seemed stitched together neatly. The only wrinkle was his parents. Margaret and Richard Lawson treated life like a country club membership. They measured people by neighborhoods, job titles, and last names instead of kindness. My little tailoring business embarrassed them. They politely called it creative work, the same way people politely avoid mentioning something unpleasant. Whenever guests visited, Margaret introduced me as Grant's wife who enjoys sewing. Enjoys, as if I played with ribbons instead of paying half our mortgage. Grant usually smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. At first, I accepted that silence. Later, I understood silence can be another form of agreement. Still, I kept stitching. When I became pregnant, I hoped our daughter might soften everyone. Instead, she became another symbol to display. Margaret immediately planned baby showers, expensive nursery decorations, and professional photo sessions. She loved appearances. Every social media post made our family look perfect. The difficult parts, the swollen ankles, endless appointments, sleepless nights, never appeared in those photographs. My mother noticed. Her name is Eleanor. Unlike Margaret, my mom believed people should earn respect instead of expecting it. She spent 35 years as a legal secretary before retiring. She knew property law almost as well as most attorneys. She also noticed details other people ignored. The prettier someone paints the picture, she'd often tell me, the more carefully I check the frame. I laughed whenever she said it. I stopped laughing after Lily was born. Labor lasted 19 exhausting hours. Grant held my hand through most of it. I remember thinking we had survived the hardest day of our marriage. I couldn't have been more mistaken. The morning after we came home from the hospital, Margaret insisted she would help us settle in. Richard arrived carrying flowers. Everything felt oddly formal. Margaret barely looked at Lily. Instead, she looked around the house as though inspecting hotel furniture. Finally, she folded her hands. She explained that Grant's career required stability. A newborn would create financial stress. My tailoring business wasn't dependable enough. Recovery after childbirth would prevent me from contributing properly. Then she looked directly at me. There simply isn't room for a useless wife. The words weren't shouted, they didn't need to be. Some scissors are sharp enough to cut without force. I waited for Grant to object. He stared at the floor. That silence hurt more than Margaret's sentence ever could. Within 20 minutes, my hospital bag sat beside the front door. Lily slept peacefully against my shoulder. I walked outside because no one physically pushed me. Sometimes dignity means leaving before someone has the chance. The sidewalk felt strangely wide. Neighbors pretended not to notice. Cars continued passing as though families didn't collapse every day. I remember adjusting Lily's blanket more carefully than necessary. Tailors smooth fabric whenever their hands need something to do. Mine did. About 15 minutes later, a black sedan turned onto the street. It wasn't expensive enough to attract attention. It didn't need to. My mother stepped out. Beside her walked Daniel Brooks. Daniel had been one of the city's most respected property attorneys for nearly 40 years. Margaret's smile disappeared the instant she recognized him. My mother didn't ask whether I was okay. She already knew. Instead, she quietly took Lily into her arms. Then she looked at me. I brought paperwork. Not comfort. Paperwork. Sometimes that's how justice begins. You see, Grant's parents believed the house belonged entirely to their son. That assumption had supported every cruel decision they'd made. Reality looked different. 5 years earlier, when Grant and I bought the property, banks rejected our application twice. My tailoring business had stronger financial records than Grant's commission-based income. My mother quietly loaned us nearly $300,000 from money my late father had invested decades earlier. She insisted on one condition. Her attorney would secure her interest legally until the loan was repaid. Grant agreed immediately. Margaret never bothered reading the documents. She assumed family wealth made paperwork unnecessary. Daniel opened his briefcase. Everything was documented. The loan, the recorded lien, default clauses, ownership protections. Because Grant had stopped making agreed repayments over the previous year without informing me, several legal conditions had already activated. The situation wasn't dramatic. It was administrative. Those are often the strongest victories, Margaret argued. Daniel simply handed her copies. Richard demanded explanations. Daniel calmly referenced page numbers. Grant finally looked up. For the first time that day he seemed frightened, not because of me. Because facts don't negotiate. Within 2 weeks, court proceedings confirmed what the documents already established. Grant and his parents had attempted to remove me from property protected under existing legal agreements. They hadn't simply behaved cruelly. They had acted recklessly. Eventually, they agreed to sell the house. Most proceeds satisfied outstanding obligations. My mother's investment returned with interest. My portion remained protected. Grant received considerably less than anyone expected. Justice rarely sounds dramatic. Usually it sounds like signatures. I rented a modest home near my tailoring shop. Business grew faster than ever. Word spread not about the legal case because I never discussed it publicly, but about my work. People appreciate quiet professionals. One afternoon, an elderly businessman named Charles Whitmore visited the shop. He needed alterations before receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. We talked while I pinned his jacket. Weeks later, he unexpectedly recommended my business to several luxury clothing companies. Within months, my little alterations shop expanded into a custom tailoring studio employing 6 people. Success arrived one careful stitch at a time. Grant attempted reconciliation, not immediately. Only after his career stalled. I listened respectfully. Then I declined. Broken fabric sometimes holds together after repair. Broken trust rarely does. Margaret never apologized. She continued insisting everything had been a misunderstanding. Perhaps she truly believed it. People who spend years protecting appearances eventually mistake them for truth. Richard quietly disappeared from family gatherings. I suspect embarrassment finally outweighed pride. As for Lily, she grew surrounded by people who measured worth differently. My mother taught her that kindness leaves stronger legacies than money. I taught her sewing. Not because she needed the skill, because stitching teaches patience. Every careful repair reminds us something damaged doesn't have to define the future. Years later, Lily asked why we didn't live in the big house anymore. Children notice changes without understanding history. I smiled. I told her houses are only buildings. Home is wherever people are glad you've arrived. She nodded thoughtfully before returning to her coloring book. A few minutes later she looked up again. Was I ever the reason we left? Children sometimes ask questions adults spend years avoiding. I put down my needle. I held her hands. I told her the truest sentence I've ever spoken. No, sweetheart, you were never the problem. You were the reason I found the courage to leave. She smiled. Then she asked if she could learn another sewing stitch. Life, once again, felt beautifully ordinary. And ordinary, after surviving extraordinary betrayal, is a remarkable gift. Never confuse silence with weakness. Quiet dignity, careful preparation, and the truth written in actions often accomplish more than anger ever could. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments what part stayed with you the most. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Family Reckoning, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story, where family secrets always leave a mark.